G'day, Mark from Mustard Bikes here. We're in the workshop today with the all new for 2024 Duke 990. We've developed a tail tidy for this bike and we're going to run you through the installation start to finish. Now this product is also a direct fit for the 1390 Superduke. There is one small difference with the installation. We'll tell you about that when we get to that stage. Other than that, the installation process is identical. So, before we get started, we are going to need some tools. This install was filmed with an early release bike. As bike designs are updated and revamped over the years, some aspects of this installation may have changed. Please check our video description below to find out if there are any changes to the installation process shown here. The tools you'll need to get the job done are a Phillips head and a flat blade screwdriver, an 8mm and 10mm spanner, a ratchet with an extension and an 8mm socket, and in our case we also have a T20 and a T25 Torx bit. You can also get away using Torx Allen keys for those, a pair of side cutters and a 4mm Allen key. In the box you'll find the product card that directed you to this video, a bag of nuts and bolts and cable ties, and then in amongst all these packing peanuts wrapped in paper you'll find the three components of the tail tidy. The tail tidy consists of the base plate, the supporting arm, and then also the plate mount itself with the pre-installed LED bulb. In the bag you'll find 4 cable ties, 2 M6x16 bolts, 2 M6x12 bolts, 3 countersunk M6x16 bolts, 3 nylock nuts in M6 and 2 nylock nuts in M5. Now we've got everything together that we need for the install. First step is to take the key and remove the pillion seat. So under the seat is the one place that the installation differs between the 990 and the 1390. On the 990 everything's easily accessible. On the 1390, to find the wiring plug, there's a little plastic cover that we've shown in a picture here. It's got 3 10mm bolts holding it in place, which you'll need to remove, and then the cover should simply lift away, giving you access to the plug. Locate and disconnect the plug using a flat blade screwdriver. From underneath the rear fender, we're going to use our 8mm socket to remove the 4 bolts holding it on. Now, as we remove the last bolt, just make sure you're holding onto the rear fender so it doesn't fall away to the ground. And then we can pull that through, pull the plug through, and with that, the rear fender's removed from the bike. So we're now going to take this over to the bench and transfer the indicators to the tail tidy. To remove the indicators from the rear fender, we're going to have to remove these 3 bolts here. We're going to do that with our T20 socket. We then also need to unbolt the indicators themselves, and we're going to do this with our T25 socket. So just take the bolt out of either side. With all those bolts removed, we can now separate the 2 halves of the rear fender. To do that, we're going to come to the top here and you'll see there's a little notch. We're just going to get our flat blade screwdriver, slide that under that notch, and then just pry this top part up. You'll hear it click there. Do the same on the other side. As you can see, that part then comes separate from the main fender. So we're going to put that to the side, which then gives us access to this wiring. So we're going to feed the sub harness out from here, and then we're going to disconnect all these connectors using our flat blade screwdriver. So this one's for the number plate light. And then we've got the indicator on each side. So these are a bit hard to find the pin. The pin's just up on the top here. So pop that in. and then we can pull those out like such. Then we're just going to pop that sub harness to the side because we're going to reuse that later. And then we can also remove the indicators. To remove the indicators, we're just going to give it a half turn or a quarter turn, and then they will pop out the side. So now, with that indicator removed, we're going to put that on our plate mount for the tail tidy. So when we do that, we're just going to make sure that we put the same indicator on the same side as it was on the stock Fender. The installation process is exactly the same. Slide it in and then give it a quarter turn. So then pop that to the side. We're then going to take that original bolt, throw that down the side here, and then we're going to take one of the smaller M5 nuts that came in the kit and do that one up. So we then do that up with our 8mm spanner and our T25 socket. So we can then, of course, do the same to the one on the other side. So now we have those indicators in place, we're just going to do a quick bit of cable management. We're going to take these cable ties, and you'll see there's two little holes here. So you can run the cable tie through there, around the front, and you'll see there's a little slot that it sits in. So run that one through there. And then we're going to use that to hold the indicator wire in place. So I'm just going to make sure that this sheath is all the way up. Put that through here. And then just do that cable tie up nice and tight. Then we do the same to the other side and capture that one as well. And then we take our side cutters and just cut off the tails of those cable ties. So we're then going to continue by putting the plate mount onto the base. So on the base, I've already pre-fitted this cable tie, same as those ones. So you want to put it through with the tab facing up and go down and then out. So then we're going to unwind this plate light cable. And we're going to feed that from the top side here through this hole and then all the way through. So then to join these two parts, we're going to take one of our countersunk bolts and our larger M6 nuts. We're going to run that through this center hole and then run that through the hole that's in the tab. So then we fit the nut to that. It is a little bit challenging with all these wires, but so put the nut on top of there. So now we're just going to tighten that up using our 10mm spanner and our Phillips head screwdriver. So tighten that all the way up. We don't have to go super tight, it's just to hold it in place at this stage. So just straighten this up a bit. So this assembly is now ready to fit to the bike. Before we do that though, we have one more task. Remove the grommet from the bottom of the bike and then take your sub harness and that grommet, and we're going to feed the sub harness through the grommet. Then we're going to pull it all the way through, right down to the bottom. When we get here, feed all these little bits through, except for the two indicator wires. So you see we've got these resistors here. We're going to take the number plate wire as well and feed that out. We can then reinstall that sub harness and the grommet into the bike through the original hole, pulling all those components through, and then just making sure that that grommet has reseated properly into the bike. With that done, we can then take the tail tidy itself. We're just going to feed that number plate wire through the main access hole here. We'll feed that number plate wire through the grommet as well, and then into the back of the bike. And then we're going to take one of our M6x12 bolts, pull the whole assembly up, feed those indicator wires through that access hole, and then we're going to use that bolt just through one of the top mounting holes to hold the assembly in place. We can then take a second M6x12 and put that in place as well, making sure that the lower two holes are aligned up before we tighten the two bolts. Reconnect the indicators, making sure that the plug with the brown trim goes to its corresponding plug and the plug with the blue trim also goes to the corresponding plug. We can then take the cable tie that we installed earlier and use it to keep all the wiring in place. Don't forget to trim the tail off with your side cutters. The final piece of the tail tidy is the support arm. So we're going to sit that underneath, making sure it encases all the wiring, and then making sure that the two indicator wires align into the slots provided. You can then take your M6x16 bolts, and they go into the bottom two holes. We're just going to wind those in finger tight, and we're not going to tighten them up just yet. We then take our two remaining countersunk bolts and the two remaining M6 nylock nuts to bolt on our plate mount. Use your Phillips head screwdriver and your 10mm spanner to put those in place. Before you tighten them up, make sure that the plate mount's aligned. And once you're happy with the alignment, tighten them up fully. We can then also fully tighten the two lower bolts on the support arm. Back on the top side of the bike, we can now reconnect the number plate light to that sub harness, and then we can also reconnect the sub harness into the bike's harness. Now, this is where the 990 and the 1390 are going to differ a little bit. We're just going to tidy up this wiring in here using that extra cable tie that was supplied, but the space and location that the wiring goes in either of the two bikes is slightly different. Bearing in mind with the 1390 that you've got that plastic cover to put back in place. So now that all the wiring's hooked up, we're going to do a really important check. Now, this bike is pre-delivery, so the battery hasn't been hooked up yet and we can't actually turn the bike on. But what I'd like you to do is go and take your key, turn on your ignition, and then go and check that your indicators are working left and right on the correct sides, that your number plate light's working, and most importantly, that when you pull the brake, your brake lights are working as well. Now, if for whatever reason none of that's working properly, just trace your steps back and make sure that everything's hooked up properly, that your left and right plugs are connected properly, and that you haven't potentially blown a fuse or something similar if you've had the ignition of the bike on. Hopefully, if you did have any issues, that will rectify the situation. The final step, reinstall your pillion seat, affix your number plate, and you're ready to head out for a ride. It's a wise idea after your first ride or a few rides, go over everything, check all the nuts and bolts are tight, and especially with this bike being that the brake lights are integrated into the indicators, check the functionality of all those lights. Make sure your brake's working, indicators are working, etc. We hope this video has helped you install the product. If you haven't yet purchased one and you'd like to, mustardbikes.com. We carry a whole range of tail tidies for a whole range of bikes, including the 790, the 890, the 1290, the previous generation, and the 1390. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to send us pictures of your bike, tag us on Instagram, get in touch with us on Facebook, like and comment on this video. We love hearing from our customers. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Ready when you are. Okay, start the blooper reel there. I found it. That's what she said. The M16, that sounded really Let's do that again. Take 6,382.5. Oh, so close.
Cut.